Success ain't a magic trick. It's a set of principles. Don't matter about your education. There's people in here way smarter than me. The Bible says a man without a dream or vision shall perish. You can't out-vision me. Don't let nobody out-dream you, and don't let nobody outwork you. You don't need no education. USC ain't in the Bible. It ain't in there. All them principles of success is. God's promises don't ever come back void. That means God don't say nothing he don't make true. This world gonna end one day. You ain't gotta believe that. You can say it ain't no God. Time and tide waits on no man. Ain't nothing you can do about that. The sun come up tomorrow, you can't stop it. The wind blowing, you don't know where it come from.
We are going into a week of change. We're gonna change direction. We're gonna change our focus. We're gonna change our attitude. I want a gully washing, anointing, supernatural revival. Is to wake up what's dead, to bring back to life, to restore, to bring back the luster of really knowing God.
When you're working on something you want to achieve, you've got to sell yourself every day on your abilities, on the goal that you want to reach. Every day, it will manifest itself in what you're doing. Whatever we have right now is a result of what we believe subconsciously that we deserve. You have got to convince yourself every day. You've got to sell yourself. You can learn all the techniques in the world. If you don't believe in yourself, it won't happen for you.
My father grew up with a cup mentality. His family was very poor. They were farmers and they lost everything during the Great Depression. He had to drop out of high school to work on the farm. All he had seen was defeat, lack, mediocrity. Looked like that was his future. But at 17 years old, he gave his life to Christ, the first one in the family. He felt God calling him to become a minister. He had no training, no money, no connections. When he told his parents, they said, "John, you're making a big mistake. You're going to get out there and fail. You better stay here on the farm with us." Sometimes good people will try to convince you to keep your cup. They've had a cup. They've been limited. They've accepted mediocrity. You have to put your foot down and say, "No thanks. This cup is not for me. I'm not watering down my dreams to match my environment. Not letting how I was raised set the limits for my life. I'm not going to lower my expectations to what I think will happen. God, I know that you are all powerful, that you have a great plan for my life." Take the limits off of God and take the limits off of yourself. Who says you can't do something great? Who says you can't start your own business? Who says you can't get well? Who says you can't go where no one in your family has gone? God is calling you to be a trendsetter, a difference maker, a barrier breaker. You don't need that cup. Quit looking at what you lost, what you don't have. The odds may be against you, but the Most High God is for you. He's breathing in your direction right now. You're not on your own. You and God are a majority. Nothing can stand against Him. What He has purposed for your life will come to pass. Now get in agreement with God. All He needs to work with is mustard seed faith. You don't have to have great faith, just a little bit of faith. God, I believe you can take me where I can't go on my own, that I'm about to see the surpassing greatness of your favor. My father told me that when he was 17, he made up his mind that his children would never be raised in the defeat and poverty that he was raised in. What happened? He got rid of his cup. Victory starts in our mind. Abundance starts in our thinking. He had no reason to believe that. Nothing looked promising in his future. This is what faith is all about. God, I believe you can open doors I can't open. You can bring talent out that I haven't seen. You can make streams in the desert. You can take what was meant for harm and turn it to my advantage. He left the farm at 17. Didn't have a car. He had to hitchhike. He began ministering in the prisons, the senior citizens' homes, on the street corners. God opened door after door. He went on to pastor great churches. He and my mom founded Lakewood. He pastored here for nearly 40 years. Where would I be if my father had not gotten rid of that cup? He had plenty of excuses to live defeated. We're poor. We're in a depression. I had to drop out of school. God knew everything that would come against you. Every bad break, every disappointment, every hurt. If you'll get rid of your cup, He'll make up for the wrongs. They won't keep you from your destiny. They will launch you into your destiny. when my father was 75. We drove back to Paris, Texas, where he was raised. He wanted to reminisce and show me where he grew up. We went out on the land where his farm used to be, and we found the old well. He showed me where he went to school. Before we left, we drove around to see if we could find any of his friends. We got an address and we pulled up to this one place. It was very run down, dilapidated, didn't look like it was livable. Daddy knocked on the door and this man answered. They hadn't seen each other in 60 years. We went in and sat on these old stools, and there were several buckets on the floor to catch the water from leaking from the roof. The floor had holes in it, broken windows, boarded up. Man told my father how he'd worked at the boat docks a few years, then he was laid off, hadn't been able to find any work. That day made such an impression on me. I thought about how he and my father were raised in the same environment, same poverty, same school, same hardship, but my father had gone on to make a great difference with his life, to set a new standard, to bring his family into abundance. The difference was one man held his cup, my father got rid of his cup. One man lowered his expectations to match his environment. He lived with excuses, settled for the status quo. He was a good man, but he was just hoping for a few coins. He stayed stuck where he was. It's interesting that God didn't love my father any more than he loved that man. It wasn't God holding him back. It was his cup. It was an old wineskin. He couldn't see the new things that God had in store. When your vision is limited, your life will be limited. It's amazing what happens when you get rid of your cup, when you enlarge your vision, when you believe big, when you pray bold prayers, when you dream great dreams. God said in Psalms, open your mouth wide and I will fill it. Are you asking for coins so you can survive when God is wanting to give you new legs so you can run? Why don't you get rid of that cup? You're not limited by how you were raised, by what didn't work out. If that was going to stop your purpose, God wouldn't have allowed it. It's a test. Are you going to settle for the cup? Live with a limited mentality? Or are you going to do like my father? Get rid of that cup and believe for the greatness God put in you. You can still become all God's created you to be. When you're in agreement with God, He'll make things happen that you couldn't make happen. He'll open doors you couldn't open. He'll cause opportunity, good breaks, the right people to come looking for you. 2 Kings, there's the story of a widow. Her husband has died. She's run out of funds to pay her bills. Now the creditors are coming to take her sons as payment. All she has of any value is a small jar of oil. Elisha the prophet came by and told her to go to her neighbors and borrow as many empty containers as she could find. He specifically said, borrow not a few. Get as many as you can. She went out and gathered maybe a dozen containers and came back. Elisha told her to take the little oil that she had and pour it into one of the empty containers. Didn't make sense, but she did it. She filled up the first container, then another and another and another. The oil never ran out until she finished filling up all the containers. She went out and sold the oil, had plenty to pay her debts. The key phrase in this story is borrow not a few. She determined how much oil she was going to have. The oil only ran out when she didn't have any more containers. That's why God told her, borrow not a few. If she had borrowed twice as many containers, she would have had twice as much oil. What if she had said, Elisha, I've got this cup. Let's just use it. She had only had a cup full of oil. God was showing us this principle. If you'll open your mouth wide, He will fill it. He has an unlimited supply. And too often, because of disappointments, delays, things that haven't worked out, we've watered down our dreams. We've lowered our expectations. We're not stretching, believing for great things, believing to get well. God has the oil, but we don't have the containers. He's saying to you what He said to this woman, borrow not a few.